Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe. Still a little burnt out, but I thought that news tube videos are pretty easy to make, so I'll just put one out. And such a Rings of Power video would just be there to help click us into place for the algorithm. And you know what? This gave me a bit of just the title. I have not read this yet, but this title just gave me a bit of a laugh because Galadriel's husband is alive in Rings of Power Season 2. Yes, he probably should have been in there from the very beginning because, they have a daughter together. They've been married for quite a while by this time. And Celeborn plays a very integral role in the history of Eregion alongside Galadriel. Honestly, this should have been the second season. What I mean by that is Aldarion should have been season 1, and season 2 should have focused around Eregion. And you should have had Celebrimbor as kind of the main character. More so that you kind of follow his narrative up till his death. Which, yeah. Galadriel's husband is believed to be dead in the Rings of Power. Oh, good lord. But a popular Locher fan theory suggests that he's still out there somewhere. A popular theory suggests that he's still out there. Yes, because he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be. Why is it a fan theory when that's the lore? Oh, Tolkien, he didn't actually write Lord of the Rings. They're just theories of Lord of the Rings that he wrote. Like, Anna, this is Screen Rant. This is just so... Yeah, see, I'm laughing, so that's a good thing. Although he didn't appear in the first season of the show, audiences are theorizing that Galadriel's husband Celeborn is actually alive. Yeah, because audiences aren't stupid. Like, okay, I've been told a while back to address the audience as though you all are, and that this would improve my videos. And I don't agree with that. I just think it's better to just... Well, this is more a booktube channel, so where we read along and we discuss as we go the lore, with the occasional lore video here and there, and just different analysis videos. But I dislike the idea of treating people like they're stupid. Tolkien Lore Geek and Girl Next Gondor are two examples of people, even Redbook, who treat their audience with a great deal of respect and reverence and as though they're very smart. And, people walk away feeling really grateful for them and even affectionate towards them because they treat people with a lot of respect in that regard. And honestly, they're a model for this channel. This channel's nowhere near as good as theirs. And, I greatly admire them. So I don't think that, let's not treat audiences as though they're not bright. But, okay. Is actually alive and going to appear in the second season of The Rings of Power. The character is hugely important in the lore of the franchise. Yep. And it was a huge surprise to most fans of the series when he was seemingly revealed to have died before the events of The Rings of Power. Yeah, sure. However, the way he was mysteriously mentioned seems to suggest that he's going to play a large role in the next season as Galadriel's journey grows even more complicated. Yeah, he probably should have played a large role in that season. Oh my gosh. The creators of the Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, have already teased that audiences are going to see a much different side to Galadriel in season 2. Hopefully a likable side. I'm just saying. I've only seen one clip, and it's where she smack talks Elrond, and yeah, she doesn't come off very likable in that clip. So, yeah. And bringing back Celeborn could be an extremely effective way of making that happen. The pair were married before the events of the Rings of Power. Oh, spoilers! Just kidding. Oh, man. And if the show stays true to Tolkien's source material, they have been together since the beginning of the first age. I only chuckle because this show, especially with the time compression bit, which they announced before the show, and bear in mind, I have not seen it. Only saw the trailers, read the odd article here and there, and the odd video here and there from some of the other Tolkien fans. And honestly, this show has not been accurate from what little I know, because the time compression. You're combining the era of, well, the creation of the Rings of Power with the era of Ar-Pharazôn and whatnot. Two very completely different eras, almost separated by, 2,000 years? And, actually, for what season 1 should have been, we'll be uploading or over-analyzing in a few weeks of the Mariner's Wife, where Dan reads it for the first time and reads it pretty well, and we just kind of go over and discuss it as we go along. Maybe we'll do more content like that. I would really like to kind of just almost do a read along and kind of pick his brain for what he thinks. And maybe, like that stream we had people interacting, and it was almost like a three-way conversation between the chat and us, and it was fascinating. It was a really interesting experience as we analyzed that. So maybe I'll do that at some point down the road. I don't know what people would think of that. The creators of the Rings of Power have already teased that audiences are going to see. Oh, right, already read that. Their relationship could be an interesting way of developing both characters and raising the stakes for Galadriel's inevitable fight with Sauron. But she doesn't have a fight with Sauron. How is it inevitable if it never happens? Okay, I'm confused. It's Gil-galad who does battle with Sauron, as does Elendil. So, as they double team Sauron and ultimately pretty much defeat him, with the final blow dealt by, for all intents and purposes, Isildur. So, but Galadriel's not there. What a weird statement. Galadriel believes Celeborn is dead, but isn't certain. It was revealed in the season finale of The Rings of Power that Galadriel believes Celeborn to have died. Yeah, that itself is really, really weird and unfaithful to the lore, but she doesn't seem to be entirely certain on the subject. In a conversation with Theo, yeah, I just sigh at the name because why not Theod? But whatever. The character explains that she met Celeborn several centuries ago when he saw her dancing in a field, and the pair were happily married soon after. So they borrowed from the whole Beren and Luthien thing, where Beren discovered Luthien dancing in a grove in the forest and fell so in love with her he just gave chase to her and called her Tinuviel. I really love that story. I can't wait to get to it for the channel. I'm thinking we're going to have to do a full book club of just Beren and Luthien and all the other great epics of the First Age, so that when we reach that point in the Silmarillion, we pause, we crack open Beren and Luthien, even as we read the Silmarillion's version as well. This way, we get the most complete kind of analysis of Beren and Luthien that we can. And maybe I'll even have us continue the line-by-line podcast where we're analyzing line-by-line the epic poem of the Lay of Lathian, because I really like the Lay of Lathian. Maybe we'll do that. There's a lot of content we can do as we read along with you, the audience. This way everybody gets introduced, everyone can read along with us, and you get our analysis of it as we go along. So, yeah. I much prefer that than telling you what to think, or just, I don't mind presenting the lore, but I prefer to think that lore videos should be a guide of sorts for the audience as they read the books. Like, for example, you might have the Great Houses videos. They're there more as a shorthand of sorts for when you're reading, you can listen to that and remember, oh, right, who's the son of, who are the seven sons of Fëanor, for example. So, but this kind of backstory, I don't think fits with Galadriel on some level, as it's clearly supposed to be based off of Beren and Luthien, and Galadriel and Celeborn are very different. But I think that there is an element of it that could potentially work. When reflecting on their current relationship, all she seems comfortable revealing is that she never saw him again, which could mean any number of different things. Whether he died or not is actually still completely up in the air. Yeah. When it was revealed that Celeborn wouldn't be appearing in the first season of The Rings of Power, audiences assumed that the Amazon show would simply be writing the character off. No, actually, I just assumed that they just hadn't announced the actor yet, or that they, like, not every actor would be announced as they went in. Like, you just show the character or something, and you'd have, just have him appear. But the fact that they didn't announce Celeborn, it never really crossed my mind that he'd be written out, because he's Mr. Galadriel in a way. He's essentially her significant other, as she's the more important one of the two, but he's still important, as he did temper her otherwise greedy side. And he does play a role in that he's a Sindarin prince, I believe. And so him and Galadriel both play a very important role. And, she needs a husband for her to father Celebrian, the wife of Elrond. I kind of think maybe that they should have, if they were going to focus on a female lead of sorts, maybe focus more in the Second Age. I don't know, maybe focus on Celebrian or something, rather than Galadriel. I don't know. Anyway, well, actually, maybe the last season should have been focused on just Tarmiriel. That would have been interesting. But I don't really know what they're doing with Tarmiriel, because, like I said, haven't watched the show, haven't felt the urge. Audiences assumed that the Amazon show would simply be writing the character off, since he's always been a complicated one that even author J.R.R. Tolkien never really knew what to do with. To an extent. Okay. That's fair. That's a fair point. His origins and history aren't entirely clear, even in the source material. Yeah. So anything that the Rings of Power decide to write into his story will probably be totally new information. To an extent, but you could have gone with at least one of the versions Tolkien came out with. This gives the show a lot of creative freedom that it doesn't have with the other characters, as their history is clearly written in the books. Yes, so is Galadriel's, and yet that's been changed. Same with Elrond's. Same with everything with this time compression. Celeborn needs to be alive for the Lord of the Rings. No. Not just a relationship with Celeborn. One of the few things known about Galadriel's husband, however, is that he's alive in Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy. Yeah, okay, it's not Peter Jackson's, it's Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson simply adapted it. And I know people are going to say, well, it's his trilogy in that it's his movies. Yes, but the phrase Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings implies, at least if you just look at it linguistically, that he created Lord of the Rings when he did no such thing. And as far as adaptations go, I'm not terribly fond of it. But if you disagree, that's fine. I know it has its moments, it's great moments, like some of the scenes with the Rohirrim I really like. So maybe I'm being unfair towards it. So yeah, okay. Where he appears as an apparition alongside his wife in Rivendell. Okay. It's been years since I saw the films, but I'm pretty sure he does appear in the films in all actuality, not as an apparition. I'm a little confused there. Maybe I'll just have to rewatch the films and figure that out. It's just I'd rather reread the novel again than rewatch because I prefer a book to the movie. Anyways, it would have been easy to disregard this brief moment when writing the Rings of Power and simply ignore the character's existence, which they did do that. But the writers seem to be sticking closely to what's already been established in the franchise. No, they're not. Which means that Celeborn needs to be alive at some point in the future. There are lots of creative liberties that have been taken with the Rings of Power. Oh yeah. With some aspects not always adding up perfectly with the other adaptations. This can often lead to frustrating plot holes and illogical storylines. Well, at least this guy acknowledges it. This can often... Okay, but the Celeborn name dropped is proof that certain parts of Galadriel's story are going to remain untouched in the Rings of Power series. The pair is happily married and definitely alive in The Lord of the Rings, so whatever happens to them in the next season, they need to end up at this point eventually. Okay. The biggest question, and admittedly a difficult one to answer, is going to be exactly where Celeborn has been for all these years. You wrote him out of the show, and now you're wondering, how do we get him back in? There's nothing in Tolkien's original writings about the character disappearing for centuries and leaving Galadriel alone. So it's going to be down to the writers of the Rings of Power to come up with something that fits the Lord of the Rings timeline. If Celeborn actually has been alive this whole time, he must have been in serious danger if he's been unable to reach Galadriel at all. Could have picked up the phone. I'm sorry, I can't resist cracking jokes here. Leaving many fans theorizing that, he's been trapped as a prisoner in Rhûn. Okay. Such a plot point. Could have worked had you already introduced a character in the series. Then again, I'd actually rather see that storyline than almost any other out of those that were seemingly presented. This suggestion definitely makes sense, as the city of Rhûn has a complex history with elves that's already been set up as a major location in the Rings of Power, so Celeborn being stuck there would be a great way of steering Galadriel's journey in that direction. Yes, but what about Eregion? While it's less likely, it also remains possible that... I just mentioned Eregion because shouldn't he and her be lord of the city of the forging of the Rings of Power? That Celeborn actually is dead, waiting to be resurrected at some point in the future. Perhaps Galadriel even teams up with Sauron to use his dark magic and bring Celeborn back, teasing her descent into villainy. What? Why would she team up with Sauron? What? I don't understand. Is this a thing in Rings of Power? Okay. In The Lord of the Rings, the appendixes, and in the Fall of Numenor book, Galadriel at one point becomes Lady of Eregion, with Celeborn being Lord of Eregion. They're thrown out by Celebrimbor, who is manipulated by Sauron, or Anatar, as he's known, into doing this. So that said, this is done because Galadriel saw through Anatar and knew there was something dark behind him, and that he was no helper to the elves. He was no friend. And Sauron and her are juxtaposed completely against each other, with Galadriel being a leal subject to Gil-galad. And when the time comes, Celebrimbor, whom is someone manipulated into becoming a traitor, realizes what's happened and that Anatar is Sauron, hurries over to offer up the elvish rings to Galadriel and assures her of his continued loyalty. Gil-galad and Galadriel and the rest acknowledge and forgive him, and he returns to Eregion, refusing to abandon his people there, and dies heroically and tragically. So, what this article is suggesting, so Galadriel would choose Sauron and Mordor against Gil-galad? What's going to happen next? Her become a ringwraith? Why would she... Okay. What Celeborn's return would mean for Galadriel's story. The first season of The Rings of Power spent plenty of time developing the complicated romance between Galadriel and Halbrand, who eventually turned out to be Sauron in disguise. What? Why would you... What? How could... Okay, sorry for my voice reaching such a high pitch that it shattered glass, but who was the moron or the imbecile who greenlit this? Nobody would swallow this. Like, who put an ounce of sense into their heads? Why would you... Okay, I'm not trying to rage here. I don't do rage videos, but... What? Okay, now I really do understand why all the other Tolkien tubers are basically clowning on this show in the Discord. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, you know, this really brings to mind Yuri, what's his name? The KGB guy who spoke of how of subversion and deconstruction of Western culture in order to, you know, twist things and, you know, institute, well, Stalinism in the West. And this seems like the sort of nonsense that falls in with those sort of ideas. I mean, what... You're deconstructing Galadriel here by having her end up in a relationship with Sauron, whom is the Dark Lord and is the biggest villain of the Second Age. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Who greenlit this? Oh my gosh. This is just... And Simon Tolkien agreed to this? Qu'est-ce qui est arrivé? I honestly had no idea this was even a thing. What in the heck? So Galadriel's return could definitely cause some trouble. Okay. My brain still... Okay. Okay. I'm not going to read any further. I'm sorry, but I have no idea what to make of this. Wow. You know, I've heard the phrase consume stories responsibly. This is not healthy for you. This cannot be healthy fiction for anyone. If you want to love what you love, fine. But there's something fundamentally unhealthy from a literary perspective about this. This is not the story for this sort of romance. This is not the sort of story for that, because there's Tolkien's vision, there's what he wrote, and there's this. These are two completely different things. Now, if you want to disagree, fine. Disagree. But I can actually say now, where I was disinterested before and indifferent, I'm kind of hostile now towards this show. Just because I actually do like Galadriel from the Lord of the Rings novel. And I thought Cate Blanchett, despite my dislike for the Jackson movies, I thought she was spectacular. I actually deeply regretted, I remember telling Dan at one point that she should narrate more films. And maybe we should have gotten her doing an audiobook reading of The Lord of the Rings. If there is already something like that, let me know in the comment section. I'd be very much obliged, because I really liked her in Lord of the Rings. But this is just, I don't know. This reminds me so much of some of the stupidity that was in older scripts and whatnot for Galadriel that J.R. Tolkien, lore geek, ended up reading. This, okay, someone confirmed for me whether this romance thing was a thing in that season, and please tell me it wasn't. I'll post this article in the description or the comment section and pin it. My gosh, I can't believe this is, yeah. And I just know that there's going to be a few people who are going to like this show. I'm not going to attack you. I'm not someone who attacks someone because of something they like. I just think I just can't agree with this show. I need to draw or something. As said before, smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Sauron smashing Gil-galad into itty-bitty pieces.